friends. I'm Griffin Lucier. I'm here with another look at Historic Jund Midrange. And today we're mostly just going to be going over some new cards from Kaldheim I'm really excited about. We are playing a couple copies of Valki, God of Lies, which on the backside is Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. Pretty cool card from Kaldheim. A lot of people have gone over this one, and it's seen a lot of popularity. It is, I would say, it's about as good as advertised. I think that personally, Valki itself might be like a little worse than I was expecting, but Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter on the backside is like a little better than I was expecting, and it's just kind of, yeah, it's an all around like super good card. Really can't go wrong by playing any of those. We've got a couple of copies of Sarulf, the Realm Eater, and I like this one a lot. It works really well in this deck. I don't know if it's like as much of a slam dunk as something like Valki, but in this deck specifically, we're running like Cheville, Scavenging Ooze, lots of stuff that like wants to put our opponent's stuff in the graveyard, and so it can get really big, and it helps in a lot of different ways. One is just that it's a really big threat, but the other is that, like, you know, we've got all of these spot removal cards. Well, Sarulf can kind of come in and be like, okay, you've done all your spot removal, but there's still like have a lot of goblins or tokens or whatever in play. Well, we can get rid of all that with Sarulf, and just like a threat that gets really big. Like, it's, you know, you'll pay 3 mana, it gets up to like a 6/6 or something over the course of time. So I really like this one too. It's just kind of a really good all-around card. And then we got Asika's Chariot, which is like, I think that this card is one of the, just a sleeper in this set. So far, I have been really, really impressed with this card, and it just kind of does everything that we want to do in a deck like this. And it's also just like not even, you know, we didn't even like do very much to accommodate it. We don't have a lot of big tokens. We don't have a lot of like blinking stuff like Yorion or anything. Like any of that, of course, and gets even better, but like Asika's Chariot has just been so good in this format. It attacks really well, gives your Bone Crusher Giants and stuff haste, and gets out of hand if they don't do anything about it, and just plays defense really, really well. And at the same time, it's still just like you're getting like 3 permanents on the board for 1 card. Easy to cast. Been really, really impressed with this card. So that's the three spells from Kaldheim that I like the most, that we've tried. I also would like to mention Knotfold Slumbermound has been really good. It just happens to be like exactly when you get into the stage of the game where you're thinking about trying to get, you know, kind of glean some value from your lands. It just happens to be like perfect, because what you want is a threat that's big enough to threaten any like planeswalkers that they top deck, threaten their life total, and also it destroys your opponent's lands, because so many people are playing their own copies of value lands. Could be like Castle Embereth, Castle Lockthwing, Castle Vantress, Castle Ardenvale, right? Could be Faceless Haven, the new one. Could be Escanta, the Sunken Ruin. Like, there's a lot of lands in the format that can take over the game, and this is like beats up on people who are playing for the long game. You basically like trump them in the long game with this card. It's been pretty good so far. So that's just about it. Taking a look at the rest of the deck, we've got I've tried going into like a Gigantha shell here, and Gigantha's been really good too. We've got a lot of just a lot of stuff going on in this deck where it's like the cards themselves are pretty cheap. They're pretty efficient. And the way that we deal with that is that, like, we don't have... We still play a lot of lands. I think I'm playing 27 lands, which seems like a ton, right? But you need to have a lot of lands to get all of your colors, right? Because we don't have a Triome or anything. And I'm not, like, a huge Fabled Passage fan. I feel like Fabled Passage in a deck like this ends up making your mana worse overall instead of better. But we... 27 lands, but all cheap spells. Well, how do you make that work, right? And the way you make that work is by playing stuff like Gigantha, stuff like Nuffled Slumbermound and Castle Locthwain, so you have stuff to do with your excess mana. And then other things like Valki and Inscription of Ruin, where it's like, you can just, like, all of a sudden your cheap, efficient spells can, in the late game, turn into these big explosive spells that cost a lot of mana. So... we're running out of cards, like, very rarely. We're running out of stuff to do very rarely. And we're hitting our land drops pretty early on often. So, it's... so far, the deck, it like, runs pretty smoothly. You know, the format is going to shake out here, and we'll see, like, what we want to do as far as our exact, you know, specific choices of cards here. You know, maybe, like, more Maelstrom Pulses or less Maelstrom Pulses, or eliminates, or whatever. But so far, it's, like, run really smooth. You've got stuff to do early, stuff to do late. And I really like where it's at with these new additions from Kaldheim. And I played 4 matches with this on the ladder this morning, and we're going to go over them. All right, here we go for our first match. Hand looks pretty good. A couple of removal spells, a Thoughtseize, and a big threat. And the other thing is that, like, you just get a lot of value out of having Gigantha. It's like, every hand looks a lot better when you have your, you know, when you have an 8th card in it. This is a pretty good example of Asika's Chariot being really good too. Like, I'm looking at this hand and I'm, you know, no idea what I'm playing against game 1, but it's just like, whatever I'm going to be doing, Asika's Chariot looks like it's going to be good. Either I'm Thoughtseizing away their answers for Asika's Chariot and beating them down with it, or I'm, you know, using my removal spells to keep up and then using Asika's Chariot to really put the brakes on any aggro opponent. Looks like our opponent is playing Grixis. And so here is them getting rid of that Asika's Chariot. So gonna have to come up with a new plan, I guess. But we're gonna get paid out here a little bit with our Canyon Slough. Adding, like, some value to your lands, really paying off here. 27 lands seems like it's a lot, but if, you know, some of them have cycling, some of them are Castle Locthwains, some of them are Slumber Mounds, and it's like the amount of lands that you have in the deck that are, like, bad draws is actually pretty low, even though there are 27. So here's Nicol Bolas, and I mean, I'm looking at this hand and it's like, okay, well, I want a Bloodsheath's Thirst, the Nicol Bolas, then what? Well, the thing about this deck is that you kind of have to expect your opponent's playing, like, probably 4 Nicol Bolas Ravager, probably 4 Nicol Bolas, the God Pharaoh, not the Pharaoh, the Dragon God. Nicol Bolas Dragon God, I think it's called. And so I don't want to use, I want to be able to answer those cards if I can. So whatever threat they play, it's going to be more powerful than Cheville. So that's why I got rid of that Cheville there. And sure enough, yep, here's another Nicol Bolas Ravager. But we're in, like, a pretty good position here. We've got Klothys online, which is just really good against Grixis. And super hard for them to deal with. We've got Gigantha if we want it. We drew Castle Lockthwain, which is another great card to draw here because uncounterable. It's another land, so we can get up to enough mana to play Gigantha. And in this these kind of like grindy matchups is like exactly what you're looking for. Is everybody just kind of clears out their hands, and then you're just like left with anything. And Castle Lockthwain does a good job there. Klothys, like, taking care of that Kroxa is a huge deal. Kroxa would have been a huge problem. Kroxa would have been a huge problem. But we have incorporated, like, a few ways to try and get rid of Kroxas and Uros out of graveyards between Klothys, Scavenging Ooze. I used to be playing some Deathgorge Scavengers too, which is like a card that I think is honestly pretty good. But now that we've got Valki, I kind of that's like even more ability to beat an Uro or a Kroxa. Valki does a pretty good job of that. So here's a Valki for our opponent, or our Tibalt. But it can't do anything against the Klothys. And we have the Maelstrom Pulse. And we have the Slumbermound. And a Cheville, just for good measure. So Klothys really kind of took this one out, but as you can see, like, our opponent is kind of on empty. All they have left over is a Thoughtseize, one card in hand. I don't really know what it is, but the Castle Lockthwain really did a lot of work there. We got 2 for 1 by that Bolus. We got 2 for 1 by the second Bolus, and we got 3 for 1 by the Tibalt, and had to use spot removal to get rid of them. But the Castle Lockthwain just took down the whole game. Basically, was just about that Castle Lockthwain. So yeah, like I've been saying, like, putting 27 lands in your deck, it seems like so many lands, but like when they're paying off like this, it's really pretty reasonable. We're going with the normal kind of like anti-control package of Duress, Angrath, and I've got one treasure map in there. If you read the blog and check my Twitch out at all, you'll know I'm kind of a fan of Phyrexian Arena. I've been playing Phyrexian Arena in that slot. And with the Gigantha restriction, you can't play Phyrexian Arena, so I'm trying out Treasure Map. And I don't know, I think it's pretty good, but there's a couple other ones you could play, like Valakut Exploration has been okay for me in the past. I'm sure Maze Mine Tome is also just fine. But going with Treasure Map this time, I think it's like the most like mana efficient of them. So with the Thoughtseize, looks like 4 cards that don't answer Treasure Map and 1 that does. Pretty simple. And I believe, yeah, our opponent just concedes here. They must have just not had a land or whatever, and we're just gonna... The thing is, like, that Treasure Map was just going to bury them in card advantage, so... So good showing there. Again, like, it's hard to go toe to toe on in a value game against a deck that's playing blue, whether they have like card draw or Nicol Bolas or you know, anything like that. We're not set up to race opponents and put pressure on, really. We have to try and beat them in the long game like this, and Castle Locthwain was really good there. But we have, yeah, that's kind of the whole gig with this against control decks and other mid-range decks, is that we just have a lot of extra value baked into our list by our utility lands and Gigantha and cards with kicker. So, yeah, let's go to the second game. All right. So here we are for the second matchup here. This is a hand that, like, would not probably be good enough on the play, or on the draw, but on the play, I think it's fine. And again, Asika's Chariot coming in huge here. It's just like, whatever our opponent is doing, removal spell into Asika's Chariot is going to be really good. And we have these Canyon Sloughs to cycle if we want to. Clearly, I want to play one because I'm going to need a black source at some point this game. But the second one, later on, like, we can cycle it if we want. But we don't have to. See what happens. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. Opponents. Ooh, okay. Forest Elf. And we drew just about the best card. I don't know. Cheville might have been a better draw or something, but Bone Crusher Giant's perfect here. Our opponent is on Gruul. They don't have a 2-drop. Definitely kept their hand on the strength of Elf into 3-drop. And so, like, I'm not always the biggest proponent of, like, Bolt the Bird or whatever. But it definitely seemed like the right thing to do there. Get the free, you know, Bone Crusher Giant. Usage. And so here's Chariot, and it's just like, what are they supposed to do? You know? They have a 4/4. They can't, like, attack into it. They can't just, like, sit around either, though, because then I'll start attacking and gaining more value, and they have to trade, and then I'm like, you know. So, opponent collected companies into, like, a pretty good collected company. But this is, like, a pretty bad attack, and you can kind of tell that, like, okay, probably Asika's Chariot's just, like, not on people's radar and don't really know exactly how to play against it, but we're gonna basically, you know, 0 for 1 their best card in their deck. So I don't know if that's like a tilt scoop or whatever, but yeah, Asika's Chariot is a huge roadblock for them. If you go back, let me just look real quick and pause it for a split second. We can actually see their hand. I mean, their hand was good. They had another Spellbreaker, another On-Crop Crasher, a Questing Beast, and an Embercleave. It's just like, that's like a really, really good hand for Gruul, and it was just like, just couldn't beat the Chariot. It was crazy. So Income, Abrade, and Shivan Fire. Those are my go-to removal spells for now. You can, obviously, you know, if you were to play 3 more Eliminates and 3 Fatal Pushes, that would probably also be fine. These are the ones I like the best right now. They're cheap. They're instant speed. Definitely, like, as far as sideboard cards go, I'm looking for more efficiency than versatility, but also, like, Abrade and Shivan Fire have a little bit of versatility baked in. My main deck cards, I like to play stuff like Maelstrom Pulse, Inscription Ruin, and Bloodchief's Thirst. Those can, like, do a lot of different things. So this hand is actually... This is an interesting decision here. It's not too far off. This one looks really good though, so not unhappy about the mulligan decision. So here, I think I just want to pause here for a second because I think that, like, this morning, or maybe it was like last night or something, Seth from MTG Goldfish, like, made a tweet about how, like, oh, the pathways are great, but it sucks when you, like, play the wrong land on turn one because you actually needed it to be blue and you played it on the green side or whatever. And I replied and I was like, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I think that, like, Magic is, like, really at its most fun when which land you play on your first turn, like, really makes a difference, you know? And so then I do this. I think I played the wrong land. After drawing that Blooming Marsh, I think that what I was supposed to do is play Rootbound Crag tapped. And then next turn play Blooming Marsh, and the turn after that play Blooming Marsh. And then I'd have an Overgrown Tomb in my hand at the end of all of it instead of a Blooming Marsh, which is like after you passed three lands in play, Blooming Marsh turns into, like, really bad. So I think that was the wrong land to play there. I think it was supposed to be Rootbound Crag. It doesn't really matter that much, but it kind of could. If see, now I'm like, okay, well, I need to play this Rootbound Crag so I can use a Shivan Fire on that thing. So now I have, like, Blooming Marsh and Blood Crypt in my hand. I'll be able to play the Chariot on turn 4, but still just, like, a little loose. And, like, right there, well, I don't know. Canyon Slough is going to be fine in my hand later, but anyway. Shouldn't worry about it too much. Opponent's on a draw that's not super fast, and Sarulf looks like it's going to be really good here. I think that, like, these Gruul decks, they play a lot of, like, because they play Collected Company, they have to play so many creatures, and it's just like something like Sarulf all of a sudden can just be like, wow, you know, you played a 3-mana 3/3, I can't beat it. And it's not that they can't beat it or whatever, but it's just like, if they played like a few fewer creatures and no Collected Company, then they could get away with playing, like, say, Lava Coil or something. I don't know. I'm not really an expert on the Gruul deck. So here looks like Bloodchief's Thirst. Once that guy gets up to a 3/3, you might as well just Bloodchief's Thirst it, because, like, anything that you're killing is going to grow it anyway, so might as well do that instead of spending 4 mana. I get to get the Scavenging Ooze out. And the other thing about Scavenging Ooze, like, when I'm playing against this matchup, basically when I'm playing against anything, if I have the opportunity, I want to get it up to a 3/3 as soon as possible, because like most decks are either playing Bone Crusher Giant or they're playing Heartless Act, or could be playing Heartless Act. So like when I'm playing against Sultai, I try to make it so I can ooze and activate it immediately, so that I don't have to worry about Heartless Act later on. So again, I think this is probably not the greatest attack from our opponent, but like, you know, kind of getting paid off here by playing some obscure cards or whatever. But I don't know how long Asika's Chariot is going to be an obscure card for. Having said that, like, you know, they got to do something, right? Like, I can't just like sit here and turn my Scavenging Ooze into an 8/8 and counter their Klothys, and then get up to Giganta mana and play that, and have Sarulf be like a 12/12 or whatever. They got to start doing something. So it's not like going super well for them or whatever right now, but the Chariot really puts them in a bind. Like, we're making land drops and growing our creatures and stuff, and they got to try and race us. And Asika's Chariot is just like a complete roadblock for them. So, yeah, the opponent decided to pack it in there. Thing is, like, it looks like that Collected Company is pretty good or whatever, but like, the Sarulf is going to just exile everything if we want to later on, or the Ooze is going to be really good. The Ooze is counteracting their Klothys, so kind of just have them at every angle there. So the opponent packs it in, and yeah, chalk one up for Asika's Chariot against Gruul. All right, let's go to the next round. All right, here we go. Third round. Not sure what we're up against, but it looks like a really good hand. All right. Stomping Ground Go means that, well, we don't actually know a lot, and in fact, when we find out Stomping Ground Go, Gruul plays like 8 1-drops, so you can never really tell, but here is Burning Tree Emissary into Voltaic Brawler. Okay. So a pretty good turn too, honestly. Like that's 6 power worth of creatures. So, but we have a pretty good opportunity to play the Sarulf. Let's see if they can do anything about it. So they don't want to do anything about it. They're not going to play any creatures. Or they just don't have any. Don't know. Bone Crusher Giant again. Really great in this matchup. But we've got a 4/4 now that is able to block anything. So we play like a Questing Beast and attack or something. We can just trade off if we want to. We don't even have to. Take the 4 and untap and pulse it. So here's a Scavenging Ooze with the ability to turn into a 3/3. Don't know if our opponent's bluffing there or whatever. So let's kill this Emissary, and the opponent is done. We're gonna. So that's another trick with Sarulf, is just that, like, okay, we had this huge creature in play. It was hard to attack into. It was growing. But, like, the opponent also couldn't play anything into it. Like, they play more stuff, then we're just going to eat Realm and, you know, nuke all their stuff. They play, like, 1 Scavenging Ooze. All of a sudden we just get to pick off a creature, and then you can Sarulf, you know, -2 to kill a Scavenging Ooze on your upkeep. That's just, like, also really good. So we were just going to get, like, Mondo value there. That Bone Crusher Giant was coming online. We were going to still have Sarulf in play. That's good. All right, so here we go against Gruul on the draw. And we keep it, which is a little sketchy. But we got our colors. We got 2 lands that enter the battlefield untapped. And a Bloodchief's Thirst, and an Inscription of Ruin. Inscription of Ruin hits almost all of their creatures. But clearly, just looking for a green source here. When you get that opening hand, it's like, okay, I'm on the draw. As long as I don't just draw a bunch more green spells, I'll be fine. If they're non-green spells, I can cast them. If they're lands, then that's fine because it'll let me cast my green spells. But we just do 2 green spells. It was just like, ugh. But now we got our Overgrown Tomb just in time. Pulse that Questing Beast. Now, usually if they have 1 Questing Beast, I can kind of assume that they have more. It's not. But let's play this Chariot. We're at 8, and we're looking pretty cold to a Embercleave. But what are we, you know, the thing about Embercleave is that, like, it almost doesn't affect your play patterns very much, because it's just like, if they have it, you're going to lose. So it doesn't matter if they have it or not. So you may as well just play as if they don't have it. So played as if they didn't have it there, and worked out. And now our opponent has 1 card in hand. And we still got these cats. They can't attack into us with the elves. Opponent is either in the tank or tilting off or some combination. Certainly could have attacked there. I don't know. And they're going to throw in the towel. So, again, Gruul, you know, one of the better decks in the format. Really resilient, consistent, super simple, you know, focused game plan, but with enough just like good early interaction and Asika's Chariot and, you know, good removal spells, Bone Crusher Giants, just to like round out the mid game. Able to take that one down. I don't know if I'd ever consider like a matchup like Gruul to be a good matchup. It's really hard. It's always like they punish you for stumbling a lot, and they just have extremely high card quality. Like, you have to make bad trades. Your life total is like always an issue. So I don't. So it's hard because Gruul is just. It's hard to have a good Gruul matchup because Gruul is just good at beating, like, they're just so consistent and simple that they're good at beating whatever you're doing, because whatever you're doing still, you know, you could have a little bit of a slow draw. They could have, like, top deck Collected Company over and over again. There's just plenty of things that they can do to win a game, and it's just like... But having said that, I like the matchup. I think it's between good and favorable, and it's a great place to be. These like cheap interaction, ability to turn the corner, and kind of, I think, honestly, like fight on card quality levels with them. You know, they have Questing Beasts, they have Spellbreakers and Collected Companies, and they have Scavenging Oozes. Just a lot of cards that hit you really hard, but we're able to like often play answers that are cheaper than their threats, and play threats of our own that are like also kind of must answer. So That's Gruul. Let's go to the fourth round. All right, here we go for the fourth round. So, like I said, these are all matches are recorded this morning. It's Sunday the 31st right now. Set's been out for 4 days. Right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't want to spoil it. I can tell you that this video file is 22 minutes long, which in arena terms is actually pretty long. Like, arena matches go pretty fast. Okay. So this hand, I could see this being okay on the play. On the draw, don't think so. These hands where it's just like all lands that enter the battlefield tapped because you don't have a basic land type card just end up being a trap. And this hand, like, so this hand looks like it's pretty bad. I kept it basically instantly, which maybe I should have thought about it, but I do think that this hand is actually really good. We're in the dark, so we don't know what our opponent's playing. Cheville is like against, I want to say, like 50% of the format. Cheville is like your best card. And we're already on 6. And we have, not only do we have Castle Locthwain, we also have the Slumber Mound. And we have all of our colors. We got plenty of black mana to support the Castle Locthwain. We're on the draw, so we could hopefully draw into the removal that we need for Cheville to be good. Maybe 50% of the format is like a little bit of an overestimate, but on 6 cards, Cheville and 6 good lands, you know, turning into 5 good lands, I think is pretty solid. Is a pretty solid hand, so gonna be keeping it. And not to mention that, like, every hand with in a Giganta deck is 1 extra card, right? So it's like we have like stuff to do with the lands. Either we can win this game by like having value lands, making land drops, and grinding through, you know, Slumber Mound and Locthwain and Giganta, or we win this game by dropping a Cheville early, drawing into some removal spells, and getting some card advantage that way. Could have played the Canyon Slough, but like another land, probably not what we want. Planning on cycling. We're up against Sultai. So once you see that they're on Sultai, it's like, okay, I want to try and dig for my Scavenging Ooze or Clothis. Opponent is on 4 lands, but they have their own Castle Locthwain, which is like, it's funny. Their Castle Locthwain is like kind of better, but also kind of worse than ours because of Uro. Like, they can't use it to cast Uro to escape Uro. So it's like, you know, they're kind of hampered by it in ways that we're not quite. But having said that, they have more lands in their deck. I don't know. They usually play 28 and we have 27, so I guess that's not exactly fair. But they have cantrips, they have Growth Spirals and Uros. So at any given point in the game, they're likely to have more mana in play than you. And, you know, Nissa notwithstanding. So it's like tough to... they're able to, like, draw a card with Locthwain and then cast it in the same turn a lot better than we are. A lot better than most decks are. Alright, so we've got a game plan here, and it is... so it looks like our opponent can probably get this Uro into play at some point pretty quick. And our plan is going to be Inscription of Ruin just to destroy the Uro, and then Thoughtseize away whatever their best card is afterwards. It's not that, like, you can never kill an Uro. The problem is that Uro draws them a card, and you're just down value. It doesn't cost them a card to play it in the first place, and it costs you a card to remove it, and they draw a card off of getting into play. And then if you don't remove it, you're just, like, dead. So, I want to cast the Thoughtseize after Uro gets into play, ideally. So there's the Clothis, and that's going to be good. Clearly just taking Growth Spiral here. Top deck Thoughtseize by the opponent. Pretty solid here. Kind of mostly because it's a cheap card that they can use and then use their Lock Lane with. They're still a little ways off from playing the Uro. So here's a Valki that's late to the party, of course, but we do have a plan. We have a backup plan here with Valki, and that is that we are at 6 mana right now. And one more, and we get to play Tibalt. And I use the mana ability for Jegantha very rarely, but it's going to come up here. It's pretty cool. And Tibalt on the battlefield is pretty. It's pretty amazing. First of all, if they ever get their Uro back, we exile the Uro, which is pretty cool. Second, just like the plus ability, just like drawing 2 cards a turn, really strong. And here, I was trying to figure this out, the way that, like, Tibalt restriction and Jegantha's mana restriction, like, works or whatever, but I guess we were able to use the Blood Crypt for colorless, and then Jegantha mana for the green and the red on Rada, even though it was, like, blue and green. I don't know. But we're doing good here. Tibalt, when you untap with Tibalt, it's just like, that's lights out. Plenty of removal. Okay, and so there's the Slumber Mound coming in huge because, right, we were in a top deck war and they had Castle Locthwain and a lot of mana to use it, and now they only have 1 draw step a turn, and we get a threat on the board. We know they have the Fatal Push, but still just going to be pretty nice here. So we have, like, so we're threatening this Tibalt ultimate. They're going to have to do something about it. Probably trying to dig into a Maelstrom Pulse, or if they have white mana in their deck, a Mythos of Nethroi would be really good here. But they do not have anything that's going to work here. Here's an instance where, I mean, you know, we've had this, like, Bloodchief's Thirst versus Fatal Push debate forever, or I guess since Zendikar came out. And, I mean, here's an instance where I'm pretty sure I lose this game if they have Bloodchief's Thirst instead of Fatal Push. I don't know, you know, how often they're going to run into Historic Jund Midrange and have a Tibalt ultimate against them, but you can definitely tell, like, having that extra option would have been nice. And so now I have 12 million cards in my hand, and I don't really know what to do, but also, like, can't really lose. So it's pretty good place to be. They're not actually in my hand. These cards are in the exiled, but I think I remember playing this game and thinking to myself, like, I should have played the Blooming Marsh, but I just, like, literally didn't know that it was in my hand because all these cards are, I just have too many cards. Imagine playing, like, around the time of Avacyn Restored, you know, and saying the sentence, I had a Tibalt, and my opponent didn't have an answer for the first turn or two of it, and so I just won the game instantly. Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, it's a little bit better than Tibalt, the whatever it's called, the Flame Fiend or whatever. So against, I should actually let me rewind that. Pay more attention to what I'm doing here. In this matchup, I will usually board in the same stuff that I poured in against control decks. Duress still is good here. And then I cut Bonecrusher Giants, and I guess looks like one Eliminate. Unlike against a control deck, though, Scavenging Ooze is really good here. It's like kind of your best card, so you want that. Valki's really good too. Bonecrusher is just is not a bad card or anything. It just lines up really poorly against everything out of the Soul Tide deck. Like, it doesn't hit Nissa's lands. The 4/3 only trades with a Nissa land. You can't really attack into a Nissa. If you do, and they don't block, it only gets her down to 2 loyalty. It just kind of doesn't match up very well in the matchup. It's just like, you know, getting like a cheap removal spell and a good mid-sized body out of one card. It's just like not what the matchup is about. So here's kind of a sketchy hand, but we're on the draw, and we have Thoughtseize into Valki, which is like a pretty good shot at just like instantaneously winning the game on turn 3. Which, I mean, it's funny, right? Like, most of the time before Kaldheim, if I had a hand like this and Valki was, you know, some other 2-drop, say, Merfolk Branchwalker or something, and my opponent Thoughtseize me, they'd be like, all right, I'll get rid of one of your oozes, I'll probably Fatal Push your other one, and then I'm just going to take over the game with Uro. But here it's like, if they have Uro, then they really need to protect it from our Valki. So, and that lets your Scavenging Ooze kind of run free. Turns out they don't have it. I will take Growth Spiral over just about any card in their deck with a Thoughtseize if given the chance. Pretty much just like the biggest reason that they have... I mean, and I don't think this is a bad matchup, but I think that if it's if it's a close matchup, I think it's because of like the card choices that we make, not because like intrinsically Jund is better set up against Sultai. It's actually not. I think like almost any format you play, if you're playing Sultai against Jund, the Sultai deck is like better suited to win. That being said, I think that this matchup is fine. The reason that it's bad, the reason that Sultai has an advantage, or the advantage that they do have, is their mana, is their growth spirals and their Uros. Not even the backside of Uro, just the front side. The casting it from your hand. They just have more mana than you, and so I try to take Uros and growth spirals pretty frequently if I can with a Thoughtseize. Unless I'm trying to protect the Valki or trying to protect an Ooze. But even then, like... yeah, I made this comment in my last video, but like that Uro... I think people don't put their Uros... or don't Thoughtseize Uros enough. Because that Uro is going to their graveyard no matter what. So I decided I wanted to try and get in the Valki action again. See if maybe like one of their last two cards was a Uro. Because they had drawn a card for their turn, and they had drawn a card off of that Shark Typhoon. We had a shot, but it was not an Uro. Would like to mention that this was a one-lander, and we drew 4 lands in a row, so everything is going great. The Disdainful Strokes in their hand are just like not matching up very well at all for them. Little thing, but when I have the chance with the Scavenging Ooze, I try to get rid of any instants they have in their graveyard. Clearly that, like, you know, you want to get rid of their Uros, and you can, you know, take their other creatures to grow your Ooze or whatever. But if you're just like, okay, I got nothing else going on with my mana, and I have green left over, I'm going to exile something from their graveyard just to, like, lower their count for Uro. Try and hit the instants if you can, because it's not super common, but Torrential Gearhulk flashing back just about anything is like really hard to beat. So I try to hit instants if at all possible. So here I'm going to play an Ooze and get it right up to a 3/3 immediately. The reason is that I get to play around Heartless Act this way. All right. So that was just like an incredible top deck. I mean, having said that, we have a lot of cards in our deck that just like can destroy a Scavenging Ooze, but that was a perfect one there because it's so cheap. We get Castle Lockdown activation out of the deal. So here we go with that. Seeka's Chariot not looking very good in the face of those 2 Disdainful Strokes or whatever, but you don't know, they might tap out or something at some point. But the other thing about these Castle Lockdown fights is that, like, you know, you can win by the Slumber Mound, sure, but if both people have Castle Lockdown, like, you really want to be the one putting pressure on the other person's life total, because, like right there, our opponent was just like, didn't want to go to 7 life to draw a card. and that's just card advantage. That's really good. So even if we have a mana disadvantage in this deck, like in this matchup, we have the ability to like attack their life total a little bit with our little creatures, and put some pressure on, make them into some decisions that otherwise like wouldn't be that good. If we didn't have any creatures in play, then they'd just be like activating Lockdown a bunch, and then get Nissa into play. Tons of mana at their disposal. All right, so let's pulse the Nissa. Sarulf's an interesting draw. It can't hit Nissa's 3/3 lands, but it's just a big threat here. And I could Bloodchief's Thirst that island and get in and grow the Sarulf, deal 5, but I decided to save it. Another Nissa or something. Some creature, maybe like a Doom Whisper or something off the top for them would have been bad for me, but instead it looks like they just drew a land and are pretty much giving up here. Yeah, so a couple of interesting games against Sultai, and again, it's just like such a dogfight. It's like we have a lot of cards in the deck specifically because they are good against Sultai. Valki, Scavenging Ooze, Klothys, but I kind of like where the matchup is at, and if like you're, and like I said, I think Sultai is just like intrinsically, they have blue cards, they have more mana, they have card draw, they have like the ability to play some like really good top end stuff if they want to, like Torrential Earhulk or Scarab God, or like a bunch of different cards that are like a nightmare for you. Search for Skanta. And it's like, if they really want to, they can probably win the matchup or whatever, but I like where we're at right now. And if our biggest, like, I want to say, like, intrinsically negative matchup is this good, then it's kind of a good place to be, right? If your worst matchup isn't that bad, then I think that's a good place to be. But, yeah, Sultai's still a really good deck, really dangerous. And Uro's still like a really good card. You got to be able to deal with it. Yeah, no, I like where this matchup is at. So yeah, let's wrap this one up. All right, so just to wrap up here, I like what we've got out of the Kaldheim additions to the deck. Let's see, we saw Valki do some really good work against our Sultai opponent, and it wasn't even Valki, it was the Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, which is like part of why Valki is so good, right? Like, you put this 2-mana creature in your deck, and then all of a sudden you have this like huge, hard to deal with value generator planeswalker that's like, you can't really afford to put like a 6-mana planeswalker in this deck. Like, I don't think I can play I guess Garruk Cursed Huntsman in this deck, right? Like 6 mana is way too much. Even 5 is a lot. Even something like Liliana Death's Majesty or I don't know, Ob Nixilis Reignited if it was legal. I couldn't afford to play something like that in this format. Like 5 mana, 6 mana, that's a lot. But we don't have to put a 7-drop planeswalker in our deck. We have a 2-mana creature. And so we just have this extra ability. Like, baked in. It's just like the fact that like this is your top end card is just so nice. Like it looks like our curve is like really, really low, but Valki is actually just like a 7-drop super duper bomb. Sarulf was great. A great anti-aggro card. Has the ability to take over a game. It's a lot like Cheville. I don't know. It's been doing good work so far. I am a little worried about like its legendary status. It doesn't like, you want it to stay in play, and you want it to stay in play. You also want you can't like, it's not like a good enough card where just like it being in play is enough. Like every card that's legendary has its own way of dealing with the legend rule or not dealing with the legend rule, right? Like Clothis is like really bad with the legend rule because it's never getting off the table. Sarulf is kind of like that in that you want it in play and you want to be doing other stuff too. You want to like untap with Sarulf and then like cast removal spells to grow it. But if your hand is like more Sarulf, then you're kind of screwed because you can't even play those to, keep up any pressure. But having said that, like, we didn't even play against the matchups where Sarulf really shines, like Rakdos or Jund Sacrifice, or like, I don't know, Auras, like White Weenie, the life gain deck. Like, there's a lot of decks that like kind of fold to this card and don't have a lot of ways to remove it. And we played against Gruul and drew it, and it was fine there. And it's also just like a big body, like 3/3 that keeps growing. Yeah, I'm impressed. I don't think it's like, I don't know, it's not Jace the Mind Sculptor or anything, but I'm impressed. I think it's really got a I think it's pretty solid. Asika's Chariot, like I wrote a whole blog post about this card, and in these matchups really showed this card is the real deal. And like I said, this isn't even a deck that's like maximizing it. It's just like super good defensive threat, takes over the game if left unanswered, hard to answer, just does it all. I'm really impressed. And the other thing is that like it gets around the legendary status pretty easily because like when you have a Chariot in play, playing a second Chariot is actually like really good. Like you can either throw away your first Chariot in a bad attack or whatever, and that doesn't even like kill your cat tokens. You get an extra cat token out of it because like you want to be attacking with this thing if you can. But then secondly, it's just like when you have a Chariot in play, two 2/2s, 2/2 tokens is like the greatest thing you can do. So just like just like slamming a second Chariot, getting your 2 tokens, and then just immediately attacking with your existing Chariot, that's like a great turn. So I really like this card. Super impressed. I thought, even though it's not like doing anything it's all right there on the card, it's all written right there, and it's not doing anything special. It's just like all the effects, all of the things that it does are good in the games that you're playing in this format. And then the Slumber Mound, this has been really good too. Just the fact that I was playing 3 Castle Locthwains, and it was like stretching the mana a little bit, and it was super good, and you really want your utility lands, but we get to play, now we have like 4 utility lands, and this thing is just such a beating. Just super good. And I think it's the best out of all of the, there's like 10 of these lands in Kaldheim, and I think this one is the best. At least certainly the best out of the 3 that like are available in these colors, but yeah, 4/4 trample. That's a big deal. Like lots of times you're playing against, you get to kill a Castle Ardenvale and then trample over the tokens that it made. Just a really good card. And, you know, like, I don't remember the quote exactly, but when Simon Gortson won the Pro Tour in, like, whatever it was, 2010 or something, I think, 2009, he's he mentioned he was playing 4 copies of Raging Ravine and 4 copies of Lava Claw Reaches, and it was just like, maybe it was 2, and it was just like, I love these lands because they let me play 26, 27, 28 lands in my deck. And that's kind of what we're doing here, is that, like, we're up to 27 lands, which seems like it's a lot, but we're never running out of stuff to do, you know? And we are completely, like, reducing the amount of times that we get mana screwed. You saw that, there was a game where we capped a 1-lander. You have, like, a little bit more leeway with that when you have 27 lands in your deck. Like, 1-landers get, like, a lot more palatable when you have this many lands. Yeah, so that's where the deck is at right now. Again, just these Kaldheim cards. We were just, you know, trying to use this first week to just learn about which ones are the best. And so far, yeah, Valki, Sarulf, Asika's Chariot, and Naffold Slumber Mound. Those are the ones that I like for Historic Jund the best. And yeah, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for watching. If there's any Kaldheim cards that you really like, that you think would go really well in this deck, and give me a shout out. You check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/GriffinLucier. I'll have a link, or I don't know how to do links on YouTube, but I will have the URL to my blog in the description. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.